Hello, Old School Gamer 1971 here, greetings one and all, especially to you, Millie and Lloyd. Today, my third hour thoughts is on the Call of Cthulhu. I've been playing this game for around 3 hours, and this is what I think. Does this be a sequel? Well, it's not exactly a sequel, it is however a remake of the 1981 role-playing game, which in itself is based on the H.P. Lovecraft short story, The Call of Cthulhu. Definitely with a psychological horror flavour to it. I do hope that at some point that it gets a sequel, as it did surprise me, as I expected more role-playing elements, and what we got instead was a strong narrative experience, which is so very nice. So let's have a look at the developer's rap sheet. Cyanide Studios are a French studio. It was founded in 2000. They started off mainly making cycling simulators for PC, eventually moving on to consoles with odd cycling titles, Games Workshop games and fantasy titles for PlayStation 4, PC and Xbox One. This game does feel a little out of their comfort zone, so let's see how they performed. I am going to tell you a story. You play as private investigator and war veteran Edward Pierce. He is experiencing an existential crisis. The game is set in 1924 Boston. After refusing to just take on any old job, the agency he is employed by is threatening to terminate their contract with Edward if he doesn't start to take on more work. Pierce is on a steady consumption of drugs and alcohol. That's Pierce in game, not Piers out of game. An old art collector darkens his doorway with a request for him to look into the strange deaths of the Hawkins family, who died in a recent fire. There seems to be suspicious circumstances to how and why the fire started. The only clue seems to be a weird painting that had been painted by the recently deceased Mrs. Hawkins. She had seemed a little strange at the time she painted the painting. Edward decides to take the case and sets out for Darkwater, which lies off the coast of Boston. Darkwater used to be a whaling town that is now a shadow of its former self from its glory days. Edward suffers from nightmares and eventually other mental disorders. This is all found out in the first 10 minutes of play. You must question the island's inhabitants to go further down the rabbit hole. What you ask depends on your stats. So is this the Call of Cthulhu a psychological horror adventure, or Call of Cthulhu a storm in a teacup? So how good are the game's chat-up lines, also known as the intro? It all starts with a quote from H.P. Lovecraft and a short look around the dream sequence, and then it's into the game. Whilst a short and sweet intro, straight to the point, it's the office where you wake up that gives you most of the information you need. This all works very well, and the button layout is simple to use. PS, you will notice if you check out the controller setup that you have a gun. You cannot use this until later in the game, so there is no use trying. Okay, is it a looker or a bit of a munter? Okay, straight off, I do like the graphical style on display here. It certainly looks and feels like a H.P. Lovecraft game. Dark, disturbing and green. The graphics are crisp and the backgrounds really add to the overall atmosphere. A little more on that later. The characters, whilst good and certainly detailed, could have been viewed at a closer camera angle. This is only a small little niggle, nothing game breaking. I also like how some of the graphics on the mental stability when you're under stress. They have picked some pretty good horror staples as locations, a creepy almost abandoned town, a burnt out mansion, an asylum, caves, etc. Considering this is their first foray into the genre, it is a game well done. PS, I know there's a few people in the town, but the population is dwindling and certainly would not look out of place on an episode of Scooby-Doo. So is this a head bopper? A toe tapper? To be honest, this is pretty good. The sure does really set the mood, and it is creepy as hell. The ambient sound in places, especially during the more stealthier sections, is very well acted, and certainly the voices do fit with what the characters look like. With a good script, a story to match, you want to play to find out what will happen next. The ambient sound, likewise, is pretty good, especially the background sound in the hospital. It's genuinely quite spooky. You can hear people in the background, more so when you're trying to be sneaky. Try it with headphones. Again, the sound is very well put together and certainly adds to that overall atmosphere.
You are trying to force the door, you nosy prick!
Easy, sir, alright? Put down the axe.
You know what we do with rubble like you? We gut them! Dump them into the ocean!
You're Mr. Winchester. Lower that axe. Let's talk calmly.
I'll show you how we have it out on Darkwater.
How does this bad boy play? First off, this is nothing like what I was expecting at all. It does have so many styles of play. Some works well, some not so well. I will address the elephant in the room, the one everyone seems to moan at, the shooting section. It wasn't that bad. You should take into consideration that first and foremost, this is a narrative adventure game. This means it should be on par with games in the same genre, Telltale and Quantic Dream. It's hardly going to have a shooting section on par with Call of Duty, is it now? With stealth sections, shooting and roleplay elements a la skills. For me though, it's the whole mental ailment. It changes what you can see and hinders what you can do. This is a pretty cool mechanic and certainly is novel. The skills also change what you can see and do. It's cool to see a company trying something different. Add to this, some of the puzzles can be quite taxing. Altogether, it makes this game good to play. The controller mapping doesn't overcomplicate things. PS, I think that the shooting section is way better than The Walking Dead. This one has movement and actual aiming in the game. So does the atmosphere hit you full force in the face? For me, this is right on the money. If you're looking to be claiming to be a horror game, then take ownership of it. There is blood and gore all over the place, with a gutted fish all over the town. The sound and graphics work hand in hand to make this a memorable experience. The locations also add to this. It's so nice to see a game so very well put together. I've read horror and psychological horror thrown around so many times with games. This certainly lives up to it. The game was released at the perfect time, the 30th of October. I like the characters, the fact you're an outsider, and the town sure as hell makes you feel like it. This feels and looks like I had hoped, like a Lovecraftian world that is what it says on the tin, a psychological horror with a good story to boot. So does it warm me cockles after 3 hours? Hell yeah. I wanted this last year and got it this week in a sale for £20. As well, there are 4 endings. It should have been an 8-hour review, as I've done the whole game in one sitting. I know subsequent sittings might be a little shorter, however, I would say it was well worth both my time and money in just what I've played so far. This game really surprised me, because in a world full of half-assed sequels, this is something outside the norm. And yes, it is a bit of a remake, but we are so far removed from what it once was. This game is not perfect, but for me it fills a void for a horror adventure. So if you like a game with a little bit of everything, that has that psychological flavour to it, or like H.P. Lovecraft and would like to see a pretty good representation, then this could be your huckleberry. So Call of Cthulhu psychological horror adventure it is. So that about wraps it all up. I hope you all have a good day. If this has been helpful in any way, like, comment, share and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and makes an old man very happy. I post new videos every week. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Old School Gamer 1971 signing off.